Hey everyone, geophysicist Stefan Burns here. We have just had our first X-class solar flare from the sun since March 28th in 2025. So it has been some time since we've had the most powerful of solar explosions on the sun. As we can see right here, boom shakalaka. That is a big solar flare from sunspot group 4086, which rapidly grew on the sun. The most recent sunspot to rotate on the eastern side is labeled 4087. 4086 was the sunspot to be labeled most recently before that, and so it grew rapidly and then exploded with the next class flare. Just beyond the western limb, we have the big sunspot group 4079. That is not the culprit of this X-class flare though. We can see that's coming right from the limb. And we now are in a proton radiation storm as a result of that. We've not hit the critical threshold that NOAA has established, their warning threshold, but we have had a 10x increase in greater than 10 mega electron volt protons. So we have more relativistic energy streaming into the planet right now from this explosion. We also have some crazy plasma filaments launched from the sun last night. I did a very late live stream on that. And so solar insanity has begun. Look at that. This is an incredible, massive plasma filament eruption, one of the biggest that we've seen in years. And you'll actually notice that it forms the symbol that defines the astrological sign of Aries, which is quite interesting. Could just be something, a coincidence, you know, but we've had Neptune move into Aries this year. Just recently, that is a 164-year transit. We also have Saturn moving into Aries in just about, I think, less than 2 weeks. That happens once every 28.5 years. They're meeting up with a great conjunction at the 0-degree mark for the sign of Aries. First time that occurred since about negative or 600 BC. So it does not occur that often. And here we get one of the biggest plasma filament eruptions in years, making that perfect Aries symbol like this, right? The rams of the horns of a ram. So we've had that. We've had this X-class flare. We also have a huge coronal hole that is rotating now on the Earth-facing side of the sun. This is the 9th rotation for this. I've been talking about this on the channel. We can see it right here. This is very, very significant, very large. And if it hits play, and we see that it is slowly coming into view. This is all going to go geoeffective around May 17th, which is the date that I've been giving now for a long-range forecast for a while, because we have some really amazing planetary geometry taking place around May 17th. It goes exact on May 17th, but there's a little bit of a window at these things. We have a Uranus Cazimi, which means that Uranus is on the opposite side of the sun from the Earth. We also have Venus and Jupiter opposite each other as it relates to heliocentric, a whole bunch of other angles. This will be in that geoeffective position around May 17th. Space weather forecasters, them looking at this plasma filament launch, they expect some sort of disturbance from that on May 17th, if there is any. This is not Earth directed. We'll look at the coronagraph. Huge explosion. If that had launched towards Earth directly, it would have given us a G4, maybe a G5 storm. Big, big, big storm. You'll see why in the coronagraph. But the NOAA at least has recognized that there could be some enhancements from that on May 17th. And we are now, of course, in this radiation storm from this 1.2 X-class flare right there. That is likely to persist for probably a couple of days minimum, maybe a few days, it depends. So all that right now happening just in the lead up to May 17th. We just had our full moon. Happy full moon, everybody. Of course, we're still kind of in that full moon window, so there's a lot of light being reflected from the moon into the Earth geophysical system. I know I've been feeling these energies like crazy. Yesterday, I basically slept like the whole day. I felt like I was drugged. It was really interesting, but I woke up like normal. Everything was normal, but then I just like happened to pass out. It took like a 4 or 5 hour long nap, which is like Typically I take a 3-hour nap, which is already long for most folks, but I slept for like a super long time. And then I woke up, and right as I woke up, we had those plasma filaments blast off. So I did the live stream on it because I like to do this. I like to report on this as it's happening. And then I went to sleep again, and then right when I woke up, boom shakalaka, we had the 1.2 X-class flare. And so what I've noticed, having been doing this space weather and earth geophysical reporting for a while, is that sometimes I happen to like stage my circadian rhythm perfectly in synchronicity with these Earth and also solar system events. And I've noticed many times now, like probably at least a dozen plus times now, that I'll just get like anomalously tired and I'll rest a lot, and I don't exactly know why. And then we get this huge burst of solar activity that requires a lot of work for me, and I'm perfectly prepared for it because I did the resting for it preemptively. So it's a little bit of like spirit guiding me. And so I'm not sure if we have more of this to come, but we do have this long range forecast that I've been talking about now for a while for May 17th and a couple days on either side of that, where we should probably expect, there's a higher likelihood at least based on the planetary geometry, of there being solar disturbances and or geomagnetic disturbances. And well, it is May 13th right now, so we're not that far away from that May 17th Uranus Cazimi. The archetypal symbology of that perfectly connecting to everything that we're seeing right now. We have a super thanks from Yuri, one of the top supporters on the channel. Thank you so much. Stefan, I hope you have food and water supply. I do. There's a chance that today will not stop. Yes, so wise words for everybody. Thank you so much, Yuri, for the donation to the channel. And yeah, make sure you have water, make sure you have food. That can be really simple. Just get some of those 5-gallon or 2.5-gallon jugs of water at the house. Try to have like a month's supply on hand. And then also just some simple non-perishables, rice, beans, things of this nature, some beef jerky, canned tuna, stuff like that. Really, potatoes, all really good stuff. So there is a lot happening right now. Also, the solar wind is quite strong. But let's go to our coronagraph first so we can see what's been happening with the plasma filament and also this X-class flare, because they're both showing up on the coronagraph perfectly right now at this moment in time. Let me pull it up for you, and here it is. So here we have our coronagraph for the past 24 hours. You'll see the plasma filaments launch off there. See how dense they are? That's why that could give us a G4, G5 storm with that hit. Not the highest velocity, but a big release. Now here's that X-class flare, and we see that it's propagating out here. It appears that at the same time we had something launch off this way as well, and I don't know what that's from. Maybe some sort of far side eruption that did not show up on the Earth facing side. At least if it's associated with this eruption, I'm not seeing disturbance on the Earth facing side, but it appears that this explosion perhaps also destabilized maybe a plasma filament over here, or it was a sympathetic explosion, aka there was another solar flare that occurred that also launched a bit of solar corona that way. So if that is far side, then what's popping up over here is not going to affect us. If that does happen to be Earth facing, then we could have some effects coming our way. That's kind of the unknown at this point in time. We do have a space weather model by NASA. We can give that a look. And so here is our space weather model from NASA. They just released this for that 1.2 X-class flare. They do not show any flank impact from that to the Earth. We have the Earth there in yellow. The sun there is in the center. We're looking top down. And this is the western limb of the sun there. This is the eastern limb. So we see this east 90, west 90. This is 0 degrees. And we see this coronal mass ejection launch off, pretty high velocity, and we don't see any flank impact to the Earth. We watch that very closely, no enhancement. So that's according to NASA, their first run model. Other space weather models will come out for this eruption, but as of right now, NASA does not think that's going to hit us. And if we look at our imagery one more time, that's what I also think as well. I don't think that's going to hit us. We see that this is actually pretty like narrow and defined. So this is for the entire day today, May 13th. We see the activity is quiet. We don't have that many sunspots. This is 4086. 4087 is rotating in. We see right there, but it's kind of very much lateral. It's not, I just rewound it. We see it's really, oh, I guess for some reason it's not working now. Here we go. Okay. We'll watch it right there. Yeah, it seems to be very much right to the side. So not one of these wider ones, but we do get that at times. I want to show you here a graphic, an animation that was created based on some research that was done. And so we see the sun, we see the earth, and what we're going to look at is a solar energetic particle event. And so we see the direction of the sun's magnetic field. That's a Parker spiral. It has a spiral dynamic to it. We see that when there is a big solar flare and you have these energetic particles stream out, the old model was very narrow in the distribution. But then we realize actually these solar particles stream out in a much wider distribution than originally thought. And so that is at play right now because we had that flare from the western limb, and Earth is, of course, in this 90-degree arrangement to it. We are in that proton radiation storm right now. Let me pull that up for you. We are right now being bombarded with these protons from the sun. This could get quite serious. It depends on the dynamics of it. But as of right now, we're just at the very beginning of this storm. We're not at the warning threshold yet. So it's not an S1 proton storm officially. If you go to the Space Weather Panel by NOAA, you'll see if we're in a radiation storm up there, you can have S1, S2, S3. We see that we're not there, but we're close to it. We nearly hit an S1 threshold. We're looking at proton flux here measured in geostationary space at 5.6 Earth radii. And this is going from May 11th to the 14th. We have 4 different measures of these energetic protons. We have greater than 10 megaelectron volts in red, greater than 50, greater than 100, greater than 500. That one will only budge during like the craziest explosions, all right? So it's very rare to see orange one go up. But we see the greater than 10 megaelectron volts, they bump up pretty quick, and we were at baseline values of about 0.15 to 0.2 for all of them. And then within just a couple hours, we had greater than 10 megaelectron volts go up to 5.1, 5.2, nearly 10. And so going from 0.2, let's say, to 2 is a 10x increase. So this is about a 30x increase in greater than 10 megaelectron volts. Now we're at 2.77, and so that's nearly a 20 times increase because you go, let's say, 0.15 to 3, right? That's going to be like a 20x increase. So we're not exactly there. Maybe 15x is closer, but either way, order of magnitude jump plus for greater than 10 megaelectron volt protons. We see that the greater than 50 did go up. It's starting to subside down. It tripled, it looks like. The greater than 100 didn't really move much. And so this greater than 10 megaelectron volt proton flux may continue to rise. We do see it went up and down. Now it's starting to go up again. This could just be it. But this could be like a 2-3 day thing. We could get more flares from 4086. Who said that it's over? This could very well be the beginning of a lot of activity from 4086. Let's check out the growth of it. It's not that big of a sunspot group. So here we have 4086. This is just for the past less than 48 hours. We see it right there. And it's a little jerky, the motion. You know what? I can even increase the size of this for you so we can see this even better, all right? So here we have 4086. Notice the rapid growth though. Again, not that large, but look at all that new solar flux pushing out. And then it started to differentiate and pull apart like this. And boom, we had the 1.2x class flare. So it's not from 4079, which is a little further on the western limb, though maybe it's a contributor. Maybe there's some magnetic field dynamic with it that we just can't see from our Earth-facing perspective that destabilizes, who knows? But that was from 4086. And we can see that again if we go to our 131 angstrom view of the sun right here. We see that right from the western limb. And that's why we have this proton radiation storm, because the magnetic field of the sun is connects very nicely from the western limb to the Earth due to the way that it spirals out. There's some other data I want to show you. Let me pull it up for you. We have also this co-rotating interaction region and coronal hole that's coming up, and that's going to be more around this long-range forecast. I want to show you that heliocentric planetary geometry, which is forming like sacred geometry in the sky, which is really interesting. But we have that coronal hole, which I showed you. We know that they emit these high-speed streams, so the density is very low, but the velocity is very high on these stream of particles. They overall, you could say, supercharge the solar wind, and we have these high-density plasma co-rotating interaction regions at the front of them, because you constantly have this higher velocity protons and other ions basically pile up on the high-density region, which is going slower, and this just gets denser and denser and denser. And the bigger the coronal hole, the more significant this influence will be, especially if it's along that equatorial zone. So we have that coming up soon. We've been having a bunch of coronal holes on the sun, so this isn't anything out of the ordinary, but we just had this one. This effect is quite muted because it was further away from the equator, and apparently that high-speed stream was kind of going out at an angle like this, so it didn't really hit the Earth much. This one's a little bit more to the north, and this is rotation number 9. We've had rotation 7 and 8 both hit us and give us high-speed stream impacts. So it's likely that's going to be the same case with rotation number 9. We are awaiting some enhancements of the solar wind from this tiny coronal hole, which is pretty close to the equator. That's very likely to get us also a little bit right there. We even see that plasma filament launched and some of the long-term effects of it up here. So a lot's been happening with the sun. Again, a little bit of solar insanity, you could say. Thankfully, it doesn't seem that much of this is like super Earth direct. Again, the filaments went north, the X-flare went to the side. This, though, it's all kind of prepping us, I think, for what the dynamics of this will be, the coronal hole impact on around May 17th, maybe a day or two afterwards, but it should be right around that time frame, probably like May 18th. Here we have our like incredible planetary geometry for May 17th. And I would just say in general, we have a lot of incredible planetary geometry for all of 2025 and 2026 because of the fact that we have Saturn and Neptune forming a conjunction. They'll be within 1 degree this July. They'll actually go fully conjunct by the arc minute and arc second this February in 2026. So we see that they are getting close to conjunction. This is heliocentric, Sun is in the center, and we see that Mercury just swept by them, activating them. First Saturn there and then Neptune. And the kind of the theory that J.H. Nelson, one of the pioneers of this work, developed is that it's when you have combinations between the inner planets and the outer planets that you have the most significant effects in terms of energy imbalances, you could say, or disturbances in the solar system, so aka with the Earth or with the Sun. And so you see Mercury, the innermost planet, interacting with Neptune, the outermost gas giant there, also Saturn, which is, second out from Jupiter. We also see here, for example, Jupiter opposite Venus, so inner planet opposite outer planet. We see Uranus opposite the Earth and the Moon, so inner planet, outer planet. We see Mars in this opposition to both Mercury, Neptune, and Saturn. So, but again, 2 inner planets working with the outer planets. And then we see all these harmonic configurations. We see Earth and the Moon, of course, in this sextile arrangement to Pluto, which is in a trine to Uranus, which is in a sextile to Saturn, Neptune, Mercury, which is in a trine to Earth and the Moon. So a lot of really incredible planetary geometries. We get some squares as well. Jupiter is square to this group there, while it's in this opposition to Venus, which is square to them as well. And in fact, the Moon is in a position where we have the Moon, the Earth, and Jupiter in an alignment as well from a geocentric perspective on this day. We also have Eris there, which is a dwarf planet, even a little bit bigger than Pluto, though its orbit's quite a bit different. We have these semi-sextiles there, these 30-degree jumps. So we have also some pleasing angles in between the other planets. This is the exact 30 degrees between them. And so this is all very much pointing to the fact that there's likely going to be something around May 17th 2 days before, 2 days after. I say that's kind of the window, maybe a little bit more, but in general, we don't want to distance ourselves too far from it. I did a long-range forecast for the double Cazimi sequence that we had for Mercury and Venus back on March 23rd or so. It was about March 22nd, 23rd. And then on the 28th of March, we had a 1.1x class flare, in addition to the magnitude 7.7 earthquake in Myanmar, along with some other high magnitude earthquakes. And that started the whole earthquake burst. And that long range forecast was given on March 2nd on my channel. You can check that out. March is going to be insane. I've been talking about this for a bit of time, and it seems that things are building up to that. Uranus is a sky god representative of sudden change, technology, electricity, earthquakes, and weather. Uranus Cazimis are very potent, and we've been having a lot of these blackouts across the globe. Small ones, big ones, maybe it's just because the news is covering them more, but sudden changes to technology, Uranus being in fixed Earth, which is representative of the Earth, and then we have, you know, this dynamic with the sun also being conjuncted. Like, it's very much speaking to geomagnetic storms and our interaction with these geophysical energies. And then Uranus will shift into Gemini, which is very much a technology-based sign. You could say the archetype is very much based on technology. So you can read over here what I've written about this. If you want, you can pause the video. You can read that. I've discussed it before. I'm not going to go too in depth on it, but again, you may pause the video if you want to read that. And that is what we have coming up in terms of planetary geometry, sacred planetary geometry reflected in our solar system across the entire solar system on May 17th. Again, you'll notice every single planet here has an angle. Mars is trine to Uranus there. Some of them, Mars is probably the least aspected, but it does have not only these oppositions, but that trine to Uranus. So again, we have this sacred geometry across the entire solar system, which I think is very, very dynamic. And it's not happening just on a random day. It's also happening when we have a Uranus Cazimi, and also this Venus opposite Jupiter from a heliocentric perspective is quite interesting. So that is very, very compelling to me, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens with that. I think it's likely that we get something from that, but again, we'll just have to wait and see. Make sure you subscribe to the channel to stay informed and in the know as it relates to what's happening with solar activity, space weather, Earth geophysics, and geologic events. It's important to note, I guess I should note, that we've just had a magnitude 4.4 earthquake in Campiflagre, and that's a big earthquake for Campiflagre. Also a 3.5 aftershock. We haven't had a bunch of earthquakes, not like we've had 100+ earthquakes, but we've had like 50 or so, maybe more since I've checked, earthquakes, but that magnitude 4.4 is quite big for Campiflagre. So we are seeing some changes, but in general, earthquake activity, unless something's popped off right now, earthquake activity has been fairly subdued. But let me check the USGS latest earthquakes map, see what we got. If anything special has gone ballistic since this live stream started. It looks like we've just had a magnitude 5.9 earthquake just south of Baja, California, off the west coast of Mexico, at one of these junctions, the plate junctions. And so that's the biggest earthquake that we've actually had in some time, this 5.9. And that has just occurred 1:43 today, and right now I'm filming and it's 3:28 p.m. This is Pacific time, Pacific daylight time. So looks like it's starting to slowly ramp up at that 5.9, but again, nothing super large. No magnitude 6s for a while. If you go to our 6-day, I'm not sure we'll see a magnitude 6 in there. If you go to largest magnitude first, no, we don't have a magnitude 6 in our 7-day earthquake count. This 5.9 actually being one of the largest in that, another one being a 5.9 in Vanuatu, and this one just happened. So no magnitude 6s for a week now, and I think that's going to change once we get that coronal hole high-speed stream to rotate. I do want to show you another graphic here. We can go to Tracking Solar Cycle 25, and they have a whole bunch of interesting graphics on this website. This is linked in the video description along with all these other data feeds as well. And I specifically want to look at the one with solar flares right here, the number of M-class flares and X-class flares. So let's go over to that picture in particular. And we see here that we have solar cycle 25, 24, 23, 22, 21. And we've been on this kind of descending trend there. But some measures of this have been broken. So in terms of sunspot numbers, solar cycle 23 was more significant than 25 thus far. And that's likely to be the case. But in terms of flare activity, solar cycle 25 has been pretty exceptional, because we see solar cycle 23 here, and we have our M-class flares going from 1 to 4 in this color, M-class flares going 5 to 9 in this orange, and then X-class flares there in burgundy. And we see that 2024 was really, really incredible as it relates to the number of significant solar flares. M-class flares and X-class flares being the two strongest categories as compared to solar cycle 23, and definitely compared to solar cycle 24, which was anomalously weak. The bottom of a Gleisberg cycle, most likely. Now we're in solar cycle, now we're in 2025, and our flare count has been pretty low, abysmal, you could say. But something interesting that you'll notice, a lot of these came in actually last April and May. Like, we had a barrage of flares that occurred then that bumped it up dramatically. You will notice though, with solar cycle, this would be solar cycle, what was this? This is 23, 22, is that we had this big spike in flares. Then the next year it dropped down, and then it went back up again. We had a huge amount of flares there. This is our yearly sunspot number, and we see that sunspots didn't drop much for the yearly count, but the flares did. And so we could have a dynamic similar to that with solar cycle 25. Perhaps 2025 is subdued in terms of flare activity, but 2026 we get this really big rebound. We may not break the sunspot count that we had in 2024, that monthly high in August of 2016, but we could perhaps see in 2026 a rebound similar to what we see here. There's a variety of ways this could work out. So we can only look at these past solar cycles as perhaps indications of what's happening. But I reported on this in yesterday's live stream about how sunspot numbers are anomalously low at this moment in time. That is likely to continue. Just to show you, if you didn't see that video, I'll just show you really quick. Our current estimated sunspot count for May is only like maybe 78 or so. We see our sunspots have really gone down, and now it's May 13th, so we're nearly halfway through the month. And we do in fact have our solar orbiter probe exactly on the far side of the sun. So it's perfectly positioned to give us an idea of what we can expect for the next rotation. And so we check this out, we see solar orbiters right there 180 degrees opposite the Earth, which is right there, that's the sun. We do see some sunspots on the far side, but not an overwhelming amount. This is 4079. So we see that just rotated into view, looking pretty significant, quite large. The same as it was on our side. It was very quiet though. It was not the progenitor of that X-class flare we had today. But we don't see enough sunspots on the far side to get us back up to significant territory in terms of the monthly sunspot count for May. So unless we get a whole bunch of new sunspots get created in the next 2 weeks, that monthly count for May is likely to be very low. And as a result, it'll be very interesting to see that reflect on the data. If we go to our solar cycle progression, just to round out this quick analysis, and I showed this again on yesterday's live stream, but if we go here, we see that we've been hovering around 150 sunspots now for I think 7 months. That's about the average. And this count in May is likely to be about 80, maybe a little higher. I don't think it's going to be over 100. And so this next count that we're going to get is likely going to be right in this zone. That's a huge drop. And we have to go back to some other solar cycles way back to see anything similar to that. So I believe they're over here. If we go to the early 1800s, we can see solar cycle, I don't remember the name of it. We have solar cycle 3 right here. So this would be 4, 5, 6, 7. So I think it's solar cycle 7. That could be the one. Let's check it out. And also solar cycle 6 if those numbers are correct. But we see quite a bit of extreme volatility here. Like for example, this one right in the center had a really big spike in sunspots, and then it went way, way, way down. But this spike still only was to 160. So it looks like we get kind of greater sunspot volatility, and here also this solar cycle, with these Gleisberg cycles, the low of them, where you get these bigger swings, and then things even out more with the stronger solar cycles. If you just kind of zoom through here, you don't see any of these drops. Like here's the value of 200, right? We've been hovering around 150. Like to go all the way down there really quickly in 1 month is pretty anomalous. Here's the one I was looking for as well. This is very volatile, like big swings. I think this might be solar cycle 14, but I could be wrong. I wish they put the number right there, but regardless, look at the volatility on that one. And again, that looks like it's the bottom of a Gleisberg cycle, because if we put them all in here, we can see bottom of Gleisberg cycle, we can see the bottom of Gleisberg cycle, and then we see the bottom of Gleisberg cycle right there. So yeah, solar activity is not completely defined by sunspots as we see today. We've had the plasma filaments launch, we've had the X-class flare, we have the coronal hole coming up, we have the sacred planetary geometry across the entire solar system coming up in less than a week now. And that is what I wanted to report on today. And we've also just had that magnitude 5.9 earthquake just to the west of Mexico, south of Baja California. So here we have our X-ray flux, and we see that our X-ray flux was totally flat, and we actually go to the 7-day. It was very, very low, and then it just recently rocketed up with that 1.2 X-class flare. We are in that radiation storm right now, though it's not an S1 storm, it's still below that critical threshold. So that is like what I would like to report today. Before we get to the question and answer, I would like to announce again, I've only made one announcement for this thus far, is that the earthing sandals I've been working on for a very long time now are now available on the website wildfreeorganic.com. These are the GAIA Earthing Sandals. These are basically the best sandals that money can buy. Maybe there's like some Gucci sandal, but we know that they're actually not made with the best like quality ingredients. This is made with super high quality leather with attention to detail. I've gone to the manufacturer, the factory. I've worked with the guys, more than once now. Super high quality. They are masters of their craft. The attention to detail is insane. And then we added some further polish and refinement through the optimizations that I recommended to them. And so that is, for example, putting on this etch pattern on the bottom of the shoe to improve the traction of the grip, because this is completely leather. This is all leather. And so leather naturally is a little bit slick, but with this new pattern on the bottom, it remediates that problem. Leather will naturally mold to your foot. I wore them a lot on Sunday. Did a lot of walking in these. My feet felt great. Already starting to mold to my foot shape. And you'll notice that these are elastic right here. These upper bands won't stretch out on you. So the first prototype we made of these were just leather, and they fit great the first day, and then they fit really loose because the leather stretches out. But these elastic bands mold to your foot. You can even like kind of go for a jog in them. Normal flip-flops will just totally fly off. So if you need to like quickly just do a little run or something, you can do that. You need to run after the kids or something, you can do that with these on. They look really, really stylish. Hemp lacing, which is super durable, also has good like water resistance and more. Copper plug at the K1 meridian to help equalize your energies through your meridian system and your chakra system. If you don't believe in that stuff, then do the research. You haven't done it yet. There's a lot of science supporting the meridian system and the chakras. And so these are basically the best sandal, just like super high quality leather that you could buy in Greece or Italy. Well, it's made in Turkey by the masters themselves. And those are available on the website wildfreeorganic.com/store. You can use the code GAIA5, GAIA5, all one word, for 5% off till the end of May 17th. So that's a promotion that I'm running for the launch of these sandals, and I love them. These things are awesome. They are the best sandals. Definitely pick up a pair if you've been waiting on them. Summer is coming. Winter is not coming. Summer is coming. If you're in the southern hemisphere, summer is coming, but perhaps you'll still want them anyways. These ship international, so you can pick these up international. There's a whole bunch of other holistic wellness products on the website as well, herbal tea blends, digital products like the Planetary Resonances e-course. If you want to learn more about these geometric relationships between the planets and synodic cycles. And I highly recommend you sign up for the Planetary Resonances e-course, 15 hours of video content. I'll link that in the video description. And so yeah, you could also use that code on the e-course, I believe, to get a little discount on that. So now let's do a question and answer. If you have any questions, I will answer them. I'll start with super thanks questions, and super thanks will get priority. But anyone can ask a question. I'll do my best to answer as many as I can before I gotta sign off. And I hope you're all doing well. Thank you all for joining in on the live stream today. Again, if you're new here, I'm your host, Stefan Burns, geophysicist, space weatherman, and more just a person trying to understand what's happening on this planet like anyone else. And so again, if you have a question, type @Stefan Burns and we will get into it. Let us do our question and answer. Our super thanks to start. Starseed Mystic says, I've been feeling it. Thank you for what you do, Stefan. I look forward to your updates. Well, thank you very much, Starseed Mystic. And I've already given Yuri a shout out, but again, Yuri, thank you so much for your shout outs. Both super thanks they've given. And thank you to the people who have signed up as new members. Mary, thank you for your super thanks. Sharon, and thank you so much. And it looks like Mary, you donated twice, so thank you again. Margarita, one of the longtime viewers of the channel, so thank you for your super thanks. If we all go together in this chat, and you are a leading star. So yeah, if something crazy happens with the sun during the live stream, you know, I guess if we burn together. We don't hope for that. If there's going to be some sort of super flare, I'll be the first one to tell you, because I watch this stuff like crazy. We hope that doesn't happen, but we know our sun is capable of it. You can't really predict it, but we know it's possible. And then MMA is asking, what if everything is a tensioned electron mesh? Ever thought of that as a base for gravity and energy? Well, there's a lot of fundamental particles, electrons being one of them, unless you're thinking fundamental as in like quarks and stuff. And you know, so much of this stuff is like theoretical. You know, how much will end up being closer to the truth than what we think now in 50 years, 100 years is hard to say. But we know that electromagnetism is one of the strongest forces in the universe. Gravity is a strong force. It does a lot of things, but electromagnetism is a much stronger force. And we are coming into a greater awareness as to how important electromagnetism is, not only for like universe and gravitation, galaxy and solar system dynamics, but also just like here on the Earth with the natural electromagnetic fields of the Earth, like Schumann resonances, our own health and wellness, electromagnetic fields and forces within our body. And electrons are the dominant charge carrier because they're so lightweight compared to protons, which are 1,800 times heavier. So when we're speaking about electric fields, in many ways we're speaking about electrons. And we know that we can have like quantum entanglement between particles. And so, yeah, I have no doubt that a lot of our reality is based upon the shenanigans of electrons, you could say. And Barry is saying flying internationally on the 17th, is this a bad idea? I don't know. I'm flying later that month. You can't really, there's no way of really like working around this. I've been on a plane when we've had X-class flares hit us, and I mean, the worst you may experience is like perhaps a little bit more nausea if you're really sensitive to this stuff, but I wouldn't worry, sweat. The only time I worry, sweat is like if we have a super flare impact, right? Like you're gonna have a heads up for that. I don't know what that would do with planes because we've never had planes flying in the sky during a super flare impact. But you can't, if you're worried about that and stopping you from living life, then I think you have bigger problems. So I wouldn't worry about it. And then Haji, thank you for the super thanks. Brother Stefan, you are appreciated. Soul fan, please tap the like. It's a lovely and free thing to do to show your care. Yeah, so smash that like button, everybody. Subscribe if you are new here. What Haji says is what goes. So one of the longtime viewers and supporter of the channel and more. We'll do an announcement there later. But yeah, thank you so much, Haji. And we also have some super stickers that have come in. I'm not sure if they show up in my starred folder, but thank you for some of the super stickers. What do you know particle clouds in the universe? So we are right now in what's called the local cloud, and this is a zone of the local interstellar medium that has a certain plasma density The plasma is pretty low density and high temperature, so it's spread out. But we're going to be entering into a new plasma cloud, according to astronomers. Either it's happening now or within, at maximum, 2,000 years. And that's called the G cloud. And the properties of the G cloud, in terms of the density and the temperature of the plasma, are kind of unknown. Because plasma is hard to image. If you have like big dust clouds and nebula, you can kind of figure it out. But something that's close by, it's very it's dark, basically. It's really hard to image. So we don't know much about the G cloud. And we do have some evidence suggesting that if we were to go into a denser plasma cloud, that could really compress the heliosphere and really significantly change the energetics of the solar system and the sun. So yeah, that's happening kind of any time, though. It's a pretty big time window. From now to 2,000 years, according to the astronomers. I'm sure in 50 years we'll know a lot more about it. But I have a video on that on my channel, recent video, so go there and you can watch that if you want to learn more. And could a fusion experiment gone loose cause a chain reaction around the planet? So the way they're doing these fusion reactions now is that they use these extremely high power lasers and these confining magnetic fields to force different atoms in their nuclei to ram together. So like hydrogen and hydrogen to form a helium. But you need these confining pressures, you could call them, to trigger fusion. So you can't have a runaway fusion reaction. I mean, there could be something that perhaps causes the equipment to like malfunction or something. Like, I don't know, I'm not a nuclear expert per se, but in terms of like them starting a fusion reaction and then it subsumes the town and then the country and all of Earth this goes nuclear, that's not going to happen because there just wouldn't be the confining magnetic fields and also the energy input from the lasers to cause that, which is a good thing. But you know, the sun has fusion because it has such strong gravity, it forces these things together. I'm not sure we'll ever get fusion that puts more energy out than we put in. I think it may be a little bit of a white rabbit, but we'll see. Cool again saying, I need to sleep, bring out the gong, bro. And I'm sure there's quite a lot of questions. There's so many comments coming in, it's hard to get all the questions, but I will do my best. Here we have Carrington 2024 saying, can CERN influence solar flares? CERN is the particle collider that's in Europe, and it has very powerful magnetic fields it uses to guide these particles together, but it's unlikely that CERN has any influence on the sun. These magnetic fields dissipate via inverse square law, and they're also shielded because they're deep underground. So I personally don't think CERN is doing any significant nefarious stuff with the planet geophysically. Certainly has some geophysical effect because it has these magnetic fields and it's accelerating these particles, but in terms of it like opening portals and stuff, I'm not one that subscribes to that. You can do your own research. I'm not necessarily concerned about CERN personally, but everyone can do their own research and make up their own mind. And yeah, it's the center of a lot of conspiracy theories. And there's some weird stuff there. I will say there's some weird stuff with CERN. So I'm not completely like out of the loop, okay? I already answered that question. Well, this is a new one from MMA. If everything, and thank you for the super thanks, if everything is an electron mesh, doesn't that explain why we never see the electron, only its trace or disturbance? Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that, but our theory of electrons is constantly evolving. First, we had them in these like orbitals, and then these like clouds, and now with quantum physics, it's like a probabilistic thing. Like if you observe the chance of an electron actually being there, it may or may not be there with this probability. And also, by the way, the act of observing it will influence the outcome, and that's true for everything, the observer effect. And then there's this entanglement and more. So at this point, maybe we're a little bit beyond my pay grade, but I find it all fascinating, and you can form these different ideas to kind of try to understand it or wrap your mind around it as best as possible. But let's just keep in mind that every thought is an abstraction. So you could have the best thought in the world and it explains a lot, but it'll still at the end of the day be an abstraction from the truth and reality. It'll be slightly off from that. So There's all these different perspectives, and one perspective can be fairly encompassing, but it still won't get everything. It's still an abstraction. We have a stupid question from the furries, but thank you for the super thanks, bro. I'm only joking with you. Why do magnets sometimes stick to my chest? I don't know, but there are some people that stick things to them, and I've seen like a show on that maybe quite a ways back, and they in the show said it was because of the fact that skin is actually pretty sticky, and if you have a really solid and like flat shiny surface, then you can stick these things to you like spoons and stuff. There's these people that do that across the world. Maybe that's why. Unless you got metal in you, there should be no reason why magnets are sticking to you, unless it's not because of magnetism, but because of the actual the fact that you can just get it through friction to stick to you. Bu Bonta is saying, so we're probably going to have a mass outage eventually. Well, I think it's probably just a matter of time. Again, when is the big question. I was talking about this with someone today. We've had these super flare impacts. We know that we've had these things called Miyake events, where we've had dramatic spikes in specific radioisotopes like carbon-14. We don't exactly know what has caused those spikes. The most likely explanation is a super flare from the sun, but it could be due to cosmic forces. Likely some of these Miyake events are from cosmic forces, like a galactic ray burst or a supernova, like passing close by the beam. Other are from likely solar events. But we don't exactly know. We just have the radioisotope signature. But we had a really big one in 774 and 775 AD. And we don't see any really big disturbance from that geophysically or in terms of life, people, society, whatever, right? But now we have technology. Now our entire planet has these power grids, technological systems, satellites. Someone just caught a video of a Starlink satellite burning up in the atmosphere today. They posted it on Twitter X. There's like 5 re-entries a day from Starlink just by itself, like 3 to 5 entries a day now from Starlink. And so if we do get a big solar storm impact, like a Carrington event or even a Miyake event, let's say, how that's going to affect the power grids now is a really big question. How widespread that'll be, that's an open question. We just haven't had that yet in our modern technological age. It hasn't happened yet. And so that's something that everyone's just speculating on, but no one knows. No one knows. Here's our solar flare, 1.2 X-class flare from today. Boom, shakalaka. There we go. First X-class flare that we've had since March 28th, 2025. That was just a few days after we had similar critical planetary geometry, which I also did a forecast on nearly a month in advance. I would have done it sooner if I had the information in my head, the knowledge. I had just finished reading the book by J.H. Nelson that let me know that that was a critical planetary geometry, helped me identify it. Well, we have critical planetary geometry coming up on the 17th, and this happened just 4 days before. So we're starting to have that geometry click into place right now. It's basically already active, but it really clicks into place on the 17th of May. So that's the solar flare right there. We have one from Feeling Groovy. Why is it that I can follow Starlink for a while in the sky, then it disappears halfway on the horizon? So yeah, when they're overhead, it's usually pretty easy to see them. What you're seeing is the light reflecting off the solar panels usually. And so if that tilt changes, then it can disappear on you. And then also there's this more atmosphere that you're looking through that can maybe finally obscure it out of sight. So that could be an explanation why. But if you have like one of these trackers, you could just continue to track it with your phone or something like that. They have these websites for that. I think I have like Sky Tracker as an app, and it shows all the different satellites too. Then one of mine is asking, any thoughts on a dry run, shutting off all electrical systems for a weekend? How would we do? That's interesting. That's an interesting idea. Some of the people in Portugal, it was very shocking to them. People that took public transit had to like figure out how to get home. Some of them didn't get home. Luckily, it was like basically less than 24 hours. But a lot of people also were like, once they kind of got into it, they're like, this is great. They actually talked to their neighbors. They finally spent some time with their family, not on their phones. And so back in 2020, with what happened, whether you want to call it a pandemic or a plandemic, That was definitely a huge shift for society, and there were certainly a lot of, you could say, negative repercussions for that, but there was also a ton of positive repercussions from that. I know my life took a huge change after that, and I'm very happy with, like, I navigated that very well. That was a great time for me in general. Though my heart goes out to everyone that, you know, was affected from that in a very serious way, and all the health problems that have been, you know, kind of pushed on the population as a result. So the point is that as it relates to, let's say, like a power grid failure of significant size, I think it would be similar to that. Hopefully it'd be similar to that, where there would probably be some really negative outcomes, but the fact that people would finally get disconnected for a little bit and regain like their sanity, I think that would be a good thing, because people are so into everything now online that a little bit of a wake-up call and, hey, here's the real world, I think would be very useful. So that's a interesting idea of doing like a dry run. I think we should, but whether that happens, they may be doing that intentionally. These all these power grid failures are a little odd, but I don't think it's some conspiracy personally. And Holly, thank you so much for the super thanks. Thanks for all you do, Stefan. Love your channel. Thank you so much. What is the difference between the north and south BZ of the magnetic field? No problem. We can go into that. We'll go to our real-time solar wind. And actually, yeah, we've been having enhanced solar wind too. I'm glad you brought that up. I was meaning to show this. So let me show you this. Here is our real-time solar wind. This is for the past, just one day here. So let me put this for the past 3 days. Get this loaded up. And we see that solar wind has basically been increasing. The interplanetary magnetic field strength has been increasing at least. We see that going up. I'm going to turn your question off. And so up top, we have the interplanetary magnetic field. It's denoted by this black line, the total field strength. Right now it is 9, but it went all the way up to 12, maybe even 13 for some of these values. Yeah, I'm seeing 13 right there. So it went quite up there. Normal value is 5. And a magnetic field is just a force, and you can put a vector direction on the dominant direction of that force. So every point in space-time has a dominant vector direction for that force, and it's always changing. Some places are a little bit more stable with that, some places are a lot more volatile. You get the idea. You can split that if you want into a X, Y, Z coordinate system, and you can measure the force in those different coordinate directions. And so they've done that, and they mark out the Z component for that, you know, the vertical south-north component of this, you know, our local reference frame in space for the magnetic field, because the Earth in general has a positive south-north component. And so when the magnetic field of the solar wind goes negative, it's pointed in an opposite vector direction. The two connect together, and we get an injection of energy from the solar wind into the plasmasphere, and then we have these geomagnetic storms. So it's just an arbitrary breakdown, though. You know, the BX component, the BY component, the BZ component, they are arbitrary. We can actually specifically pull that data up here if we look at our magnetic field here. And so we can switch this over, and you'll see what I'm talking about. They break it down specifically by component. And so now we see our BT is the red one, and we see our BX is the light blue, and our BY is the black one. Then we see our BZ is purple there. And so these, again, though, are just arbitrary distinctions in the magnetic field. It's like magnetic field lines too. It's just an imaginary concept. It's not like one part in space has a field line and another part doesn't. It's just what's the direction of flow for the magnetic field force. You can think of it like if you had a hill, let's say like a hill, and you poured water on top of that hill, or it's raining, let's say it's raining. How is the water going to flow around that hill, right? There's going to be these little rivulets, and those are all the vector force directions, and the water is the force of the magnetic field, or also the electric field. The two are orthogonal to each other. So I hope that answers your question. Josh is saying, have you looked at the top 50 solar storms? It's very interesting. It looks like solar cycle 22 was the strongest. Yeah, There's a whole catalog of historic data to go through. I have gone through quite a bit, but there's always more to do. Solar cycle 22 was a fairly strong solar cycle. 19 was very strong. There was a lot of activity back with solar cycle 19, but I'll look more into solar cycle 22. So thank you for that. And we'll finish our question and answer with this from the German guy. Does the moving magnetic pole affect Earth's magnetic field? What about pole reversal? So just to start, I have an entire playlist on Earth's magnetic field. It's like 5 hours of content, and I talk about that in depth on that throughout those videos. So make sure you go to my channel, click playlist, and you'll find the Earth's Magnetic Mysteries video playlist series. Watch through that. If you watch through all that, you won't fall for a lot of these nonsense narratives that people are discussing about, like a pole reversal. Do pole reversals happen? Yeah, Earth has a magnetic field, and every now and then they reverse. There's really kind of no rhyme or reason to it. Sometimes it stays very stable for a long time. Other times it's flipping a lot. You also have excursions where it nearly flips, but then it reverts back. Last excursion was the Lechamp excursion about 42,000 years ago or so. The poles are moving. We have the North Magnetic Pole moving about 40 kilometers per year. It was moving around 60 kilometers per year. It has been deaccelerating. The South Magnetic Pole is moving about 10 kilometers per year, but it's nothing really that's concerning. I wouldn't be concerned about about Earth's magnetic field. On a historical basis, it's still quite strong. If you look at the geologic record, it's the reason why it's been weakening is because we actually hit a really, really high field strength 1,000 years ago, anomalously high, a super maximum that we've been coming down from since. So we're still very much in a very strong magnetic field strength range. The magnetic poles are not in locations that would indicate that we are in the middle of an excursion. And in fact, we see that these movements of the magnetic pole happen all the time. Specifically, I can pull this up hopefully fairly quick. The movement of the magnetic pole in the northern hemisphere, see that right there. This is based off of some geologic data that was collected. This goes back to 200 AD. Right now, this is our latest value. I put that in. I updated the graphic. But we see that we've been moving like this. But we see other movements like that in the past too. And we see some periods here. These are 50-year increments. We see that we've been basically going in a circle around the Arctic Circle for 2,000 years now. So this is not abnormal. What we're doing right now, going from the Canadian flux lobe to Siberian flux lobe, is not at all abnormal, even just in the recent geologic past. So don't let someone use the movement of the North Magnetic Pole, which is a positive magnetic pole. Don't let them use that as some sort of tactic to convince you that we're in the middle of some crazy geomagnetic event that's going to kill everybody and cause the Earth to flip or something like this. So a whole bunch of nonsense narratives out there that are used just to, I don't know, I think these people just have some psychosis. So there's a lot of people that have psychosis right now. So yeah, just be mindful of that. And with that, we will end the show. So thank you all so much for joining in today on the live stream. I've been your host, Stefan Burns, geophysicist, space weatherman, and more. Looks like we have been having X-ray flux go up after that X-class flare. We just had another solar flare. It was a what was this? It was just a C-class flare, so nothing super anomalous, but we've been having increased solar activity. So yeah, that is happening right now. I'll keep you up to date every step of the way. Make sure you subscribe to the channel to stay informed with what's happening with the Earth energetically, solar activity, geologic events, and more, even these sort of solar system, sacred planetary geometries that form. May 17th is the big day. I'll keep you up to date. Sending you all lots of love and light. Please take care of yourselves. Rest when you can. I think we have more of these high energy time periods ahead of us. We are still in solar cycle 25 maximum. Sunspot numbers are low right now, but overall solar activity is actually quite high right now because of this X-class flare, because of the huge plasma filaments that launched, because of the coronal hole that we have, rotation number 9, soon to go geoeffective. So yeah, do what you can to keep yourself in balance and harmony. And again, the GAIA Earthing Sandals are available on the website at wildfreeorganic.com/store. Use the code GAIA5 for 5% off till the end of May 17th. Thank you so much. Wishing all of you well, and I'll see you all in the next video.